10, 9, ignition sequence start, 6.
Hello, and welcome to Rocket Fuel, your daily update of everything that's happening in the Rocket Fuel community. My name is Wack. Today is July 26th, and we're going to start today's episode with this security concern. So here we have Yoakum making a post saying, if you're running your node on a cloud/VPS service and the underlying hardware is AMD, find out from your provider ASAP if they've patched for the ZenBleed CPU bug, or if the AMD CPU they are running aren't vulnerable. The bug makes it basically trivial for your VPS neighbors to run an exploit that could sniff your validator keys. And there's a link here to information about ZenBleed. It says, this LWN commenter reports being able to see a ton of other people's testing info. And then there's a link to an article where that information is shared. So this is urgent message to anyone who is using a cloud service provider to run their staking nodes. Please find out as soon as possible what the hardware your service provider is using, and if you are, well, basically because it might be that people can steal all your crypto. So that is no fun for anyone. Please make sure that you have yourself covered as much as possible, and yeah, you'd rather be offline for a few days while you find a new service provider than staying on your current one if they are susceptible to this issue. So good luck. Okay, next I'm going to be talking about the tokenomics discussion that's been going on for a little while. We all know that Valdorf's putting forward this proposal to change the tokenomics for how RPL rewards are given out to node operators depending on the level of collateral. Well, here we have the post from Pieter, who says, finally finished my Steelman argument about possible RPL sell-off in response to the proposal. And then there's a link to his HackMD. It says, no, this is not an argument pro status quo, more so a counter argument to a sell-off being implausible and proceed with caution. It's become a rather long piece, so there's a TLDR. So let's have a look at the argument and see what is being said. So here it says it's a Steelman argument for RPL sell-off scenario in response to tokenomics adjustment. And the TLDR, I'll read that out. It says, I think the proposed RPL staking adjustments themselves are a positive enhancement to the protocol alignment of RPL tokenomics. They provide additional incentives for protocol growth through mini pool creation. However, these changes do not exist in a vacuum. The proposal's possible impact on collective node operators and investor behavior should also be considered. People adjusting their RPL investment thesis may have a bigger effect than their direct sensitivity to personal changes in yield based on views different people have expressed over time. I believe the RPL sell-off scenario is at least plausible. Whether it is actually likely depends on the collective market reaction and is difficult to predict, even with further market research. The worst case risk would be a sell-off that is rather deep or prolonged, accompanied by negative secondary effects, such as loss of trust in the protocol by node operators and investors, harming future protocol growth. The proposed slow phasing of the changes, as well as striving to maintain civil discussions and ramping up of communication as the proposal matures, are good mitigations to reduce the chance of such an event. These also help to avoid the perception of rushed governance. So the context here is about the proposal and what Val is suggesting. Then the approach, he says the argument will consider several personas that would sell RPL in response to the proposal. And then there's caveats and limitations to this about whether they'll sell, what kind of factors are going to play. So then Pieter gives personal notes here as well, saying this is not necessarily the viewpoints that are Pieter's, but they're trying to put these personas together of people who might sell their RPL if the changes happen. And then we see the personas here. So there's number one, Lisa, who's RPL heavy node operator, modestly bullish on price. Brian, very bullish RP investor. Mark, who's a passive node operator sitting on RPL ratio gains. And then we have Jennifer, who's under collateralized RPL skeptic node operator, and Robert, who's a tokenomics change averse investor. then there's the scenario where the sell-off would happen, and then a conclusion of how that might work, and finally some additional thoughts regarding speculation. Now, I really think it's worth it for all of you to read this. It's a really good document, and I think there's a lot to gain from here. Now, reading through this, it's definitely makes you realize that, you know, there is plausible that there could be a sell-off. Now, I'm not trying to argue one way or the other. I'm just, you know, sharing what Pieter's points here are. It really did bring up an interesting discussion in the staking discussion thread on Discord. Wishka said this is a high quality. Noshua said thanks for doing this, and then asked some questions about what different people would be like. Wanda says thank you. He's added the link to his research in the notes. Wanda said I'm a Lisa. I have no other ETH outside Rocket Pool. And then over here there's this comment by Pieter who says an investor might believe that the effect of the speculative lever on demand is bigger over the next few years, even though in a mature state it doesn't contribute as much anymore. And then Wanda said that last sentence is especially true for early adopters. I said that I have very little ETH outside of what's staked in Rocket Pool, a lot more RPL, and then I said I think I'm a mix of Lisa and Brian, but this is a really nice discussion, so I really suggest you go back and read this, and you know, Noshua, Val, Pieter, Wanda were giving some really good points here. Actually not Val as much, I think Val's busy at the moment, he's away from keyboard a lot, but there's some really good discussion here. Val here says, for your information, I'm going to be traveling for a week or so. I will be around, but much less deep. Pieter, give you a piece of skim. Thank you for obvious effort. I'll have a response and or questions at some point, I'm sure. So then this discussion, Tech Capo came in as well and was making some points as well. So there's some really good stuff in the discussion here. Please go and check it out. If you have questions, ask, because people are really happy to answer them. If you want to present your points, please go and present them. Of course, as always, you know, I'm strongly reminding you that this is just a discussion right now. There's no formal proposal, there's no finalized proposals, there's nothing being voted on. This is just a discussion that the community is having to try to figure out the different positions and cement those. So please keep that in mind, and you know, please pop in, come share your ideas, share your thoughts, share opinions, because there's some really good discussion going on, and it'd be really worth it for you to pop into that and you know, share your piece. Okay, next we've got some updates from Joe here. So Joe saying got some bread. Now that rolling records are finally done, I can move on to the refactor. This is a big job, but it means some cool things like being able to submit lots of transactions simultaneously instead of doing one, waiting for it to go through, doing another, etc. So if you want to spin up 20 mini pools at the same time, you could just batch all the transactions simultaneously and get it done that way instead of waiting, you know, a while potentially for your transactions to go through. It says it also opens the doors to being able to create bundles of transactions and send the whole things to flashbots. If the stars align, it also opens the door to making the daemon use a HTTP endpoint instead of the weird Docker exec thing it has now, which means the web user interfaces would be viable. I'm going to need patches and Popash help for that one though. I am not making a web UI. I'm not the right guy for it, and I've made my stance clear on that in the past, but it would enable someone more skilled than me to make one. So these are really nice updates that Joe's sharing. You know, this work in the Smartnode stack never ends. Joe's always looking at the next thing to make things better, and it's really cool that it looks like, you know, we should be able to get something like a web interface instead of command line interface. You probably still have to, you know, turn on your machine, have Linux installed on there, and then run the command to bring up the web interface and do things through that, which would be really cool. So I think that'll just make staking a little bit easier for even more users, which would be amazing. So thanks for that update, Joe. Okay, next we got this update here from the block staking team saying serverless rocket pool node operator with SSV. Now, what does this mean? Here it says there's been significant amount of conversation around distributed validator technology, DVT, and Rocket Pool. DVT is a technology primitive used to improve the decentralization and robustness of Ethereum validators by splitting their operation between multiple nodes. And Rocket Pool, leading staking pool, offers and focused on easy node setup and decentralization of validator nodes. So here it says, I'm passionate about decentralization and thus have followed both Rocket Pool and SSV for a long time. And then it says, about the node operators and are providers and consumers in the SSV protocol, also being SSV node operators splitting their mini pool duties among other Rocket Pool based SSV node operators. It says Rocket Pool node operators are only consumers of the SSV network protocol by splitting their mini pool across existing SSV network node operators and so other Lego based options. So here there's some different options of what it might be like and what might happen. But anyway, what this person has done is figured out a way of how to set up a Rocket Pool validator using your node but not running the hardware yourself. So what will happen is the key gets split and it goes to this network of SSV node operators, and then they will have a part of your key and they'll all work together to run your validator for you. This was really exciting because it means that you'll just have to set up the machine on your node to begin with, and once your node is set up, then you can outsource the operation of that to SSV node operators, and it kind of shows you how to extract the key and then disable the validator on the Rocket Pool side, and then register the validator on the SSV side. And it shows you kind of like how it looks like, what the step-by-step looks like, and how the SSV node operators will then basically be running your validator. So what will happen is that you'll have to pay them a fee, and the idea is that it'll kind of be a decentralized alternative to all nodes, but it will require a little bit more work up front for you to do the work, for you to get it all running. So that is a little bit of a barrier for someone. Like, if you think that there's no way to do this without having something to like run the machine on to begin with, then you still need access to hardware, etc. So it's not totally open for everyone, but it definitely makes it a lot easier for people. Like, you can just set it and forget it and leave it to the people on your SSV network to manage your node for you, which is really, really cool. So this is the future of staking is modular, and that's what it's going to move towards. So anyway, taking this information, then here we got this stretch goal added to Pateris's front end Smartnode stack that he put in a grant application for. He says, I just saw the serverless Rocket Pool node operator with SSV by Tiger, July 23, medium, and I'd like to add milestone 4 of my grant. So he's adding this text to the milestone 4, the grant's application project, Rocket Scan node. That's linked then to the grant application. This is, if I understand it correctly, you'll be able to register a node, launch a mini pool, and run your own validator on the SSV network, all from a browser. No hardware or Smartnode installation necessary. The catch is that you need to pay for the SSV operators to run your validator, but it's a marketplace, so they compete on price, kind of like a decentralized all nodes alternative. And he says, I want to mention that my UI could optionally use Flashbots bundles to improve user experience. For example, instead of 2 transactions to take RPL, there'd only be 1 action in the user interface. I'd need to experiment with this first, but perhaps you could launch a mini pool, register a node, approve RPL, stake RPL, and make a deposit with just 1 click. So it's really exciting that this kind of possibility is emerging, and if you could just operate with a front end, do all these like little fancy clicks on the side, and no need to run the hardware at all, that would be absolutely amazing. So that's definitely one to keep an eye out for. About if Pateris does it now, that's cool. If it happens later, then that's cool as well. Like, I'm sure that somebody will work on this in one way or another, whether that's Pateris or someone else. So that's really exciting. Let's get back to Discord here. So we had this post from Mav in protocol updates, and he said, hey everyone, our friends at Index Corp have a special request. The icRETH token that they're building needs a design, and they want your feedback. We'll do 2 informal polls, one after the other. The first one to pick your preferred design, and the second one later to pick the color. He says you can vote for your preferred choice by clicking on the corresponding number of emojis, 1, 6, or 5 in trading here. And then he says there's a community call as well. So let's go and have a look at the different logos that you have the choice of choosing. So Mav's saying, this is for vote number 1, which is the preferred symbol design. Check out the small number beside each option and react with the number emoji that corresponds. So here, we have number 1, the ETH. So it's like an ETH logo that's kind of taking off like a rocket. And number 2 is the rocket. So it's like the rocket pool logo, but the colors are black and black and white instead of orange and white. And then it says number 3, the wings. So it's the Ethereum logo with wings. And then there's another image here as well of like some color palettes that could potentially go with the different logos. And it says, the ETH, the rocket, and the wings, and some colors that are associated with them. The logos look nice. The vast majority of community members, however, have chosen the rocket as the logo. So maybe that's what they are going to go with. Now, it's really interesting that, this was coming out about icRETH. We've talked about icRETH on Rocket Fuel before, about how it wasn't really viable at that moment in time because the borrow rate on Aave was higher than the rewards rate on rETH. So folding wasn't really logical because you'd be paying more in interest than you'd be getting from the folding. Well, it looks like that is now changing. So here we have the young Cruz who works with Index Corp saying, good morning, temp check on the leverage staking trade with rETH. How are we feeling? So here there's a screenshot of some information and it shows the rETH's staking APR and how it's kind of fluctuated above 4% and like down to the below 3%, basically down to nearly 2%. And how the Aave, the green line here, for those of you watching, is the Aave borrow rate for borrowing ETH. So basically the idea is that you would deposit rETH, you would borrow ETH, use that to deposit rETH and do that loop a few times. Well, it wasn't profitable because the rewards for rETH were below the Aave's borrowing rate. However, in the last couple of days, that number has now gone above the Aave borrowing rate. So it's going to be really interesting to see if that amount will be sustained or if it will, be just like a short-lived thing, like it's happened a couple of times over the last couple of months. However, one thing to pay attention to is that the rETH's reward rate is going up because more validators from Rocket Pool are coming online. That huge surge of validators post Atlas, a whole bunch of those are now online, with some still waiting in the queue, but every day more and more validators are coming online, which means more and more of the rETH is effective, the ETH is effective, so rETH rewards go up, which is great. So then the fact that it's above the Aave borrow rate now, that means that folding can become possible. So there was a discussion that started here about folding and how that's risky, but also it's a strategy that it will be launching soon by the Index Corp. So I really hope that this takes off. I think they're basically baking in 8x loop. So he says you can increase your exposure to rETH by 8 times while boosting yield and maintaining a 1x exposure to ETH, i.e. the price of ETH going up or down has nothing to do with your liquidation risk. Liquidation risk is only if the price of rETH diverges from ETH, which is massively de-risked by withdrawals now being enabled. So Nosho says, how are we going to incentivize? There's no way to kick the node operators to free up the rETH and ETH to bring it back to peg. Well, Young Crew says, which is why you don't max out your leverage and ratio and leave a little wiggle room. So the icRETH liquidations won't happen unless the ratio drops to 0.95 ETH, which of course is a lot lower than what it is now, and I don't think it's ever hit that lower ratio. So this is a nice little product that I was quite excited about, and it just never took off the way that I thought it would. The Aave's hyperfolding that I hyped so much on the show really didn't work because the rates just weren't favorable at the time. But I'm really hoping now that the environment's changed in a way that might be possible, and that would be really exciting. Okay, next we got a couple of these tweets from Twitter, I guess, or Zeets, whatever they're called now. I don't even know what this website is called anymore. But talking about the RPL price. So here we have Thor, who says, as a trader, it can be beneficial to look for divergences. One I found recently is RPL. So he points down saying, let's have a look. It says, Rocket Pool continues to grow in terms of ETH staked on the protocol, and meanwhile the token is bleeding. The recent Atlas upgrade, which introduces mini pools, which introduces LEB8s, I think it means to say, has made it quite attractive to run a node with their service. So why is RPL down 60% since the high 3 months ago against ETH, despite an all-time high in TVL? The price peaked on the very day the Atlas upgrade launched. I think he's like looking at the USD price instead of the ETH price. But it was a similar time frame, I guess. Well, actually, the ETH price peaked in February, and the dollar price peaked in April. So yeah, it says this could indicate that the token was overbought leading to the event, and that the real impact was priced in afterwards. Many funds such as Blockchain Capital also sold large amounts of RPL around this time. From a fundamental perspective, RPL is far more attractive now given the recent liquidity inflow and price decline. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's public information about the revenue that is being generated by the protocol, so it's difficult to determine its valuation more accurately. What are your thoughts on RPL currently? Fair value or mispriced? I write about this in my newsletter coming out today, so you should probably subscribe if you find this interesting. Sorry, Thor, I didn't subscribe. But that was like a really nice discussion that came up as well from this, so go and check out the comments. But yeah, so this was one comment from Thor about how, even that Rocket Pool is growing so much, the token price isn't kind of like reflecting that movement right now. So like, what gives? So that's an interesting question that can be asked. Then we had this from Tamuki.eth saying RPL ETH seems to be in a good buy zone. So what they've done is they've like drawn magic lines on the chart and shown that like the RSI here is really oversold and kind of hitting lows of being oversold. And in the past, like this line has kind of acted as a point where the prices kind of rebounded, and now he's saying that what I'm insinuating from, well, I think what Tamuki is insinuating here is that he thinks the price will bounce again. So of course, none of this is financial advice. Past performance does not guarantee future performance or rewards, so keep that in mind. But I feel like people outside the Rocket Pool community now are kind of paying attention to the RPL token kind of dipping, and it might be an interesting place to see what is going to happen with this in the coming days and weeks. We hit bottom at 0.0155. We've kind of bounced a little bit, but kind of like flirting with that number again. So now the main thing is to see if we can bounce a little bit from here and build a platform before we move up again. I don't know if that will happen. Of course, I can't see the future as much as I'd like that to happen. I can't say that I will, but I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it and see how things look in the next few weeks and months. Okay, next we have this interesting piece of information from the Validator Q website. I'm just going to refresh it really quickly. So it says that there are 80,727 validators in line to enter staking on Ethereum, and this currently will take around 33 days because we get 10 per epoch. The 11 per epoch will be happening, I think, in a couple of weeks' time if things stay the same as they are now, which of course they will because there's a huge queue. So that will then increase by another 10%, like this, reduce the amount of time by 10% because the wait will be speeding up. But the thing that I wanted to mention was like earlier on today, not now, but earlier on today, the amount of queue was down below 70,000. Sorry, into 79,000. So I think it was like 79,900. So that was the first time since I think I want to say that was the first time since yeah, right here, June 1st or 2nd, that we've hit these numbers. So it's been a good nearly 2-month run of being above these numbers. The decline is really slow, but I don't know if that is going to it's really slow decline. So it looks like there's a huge lot demand for staking, and it's going to be really cool to see that continue for a while. Okay, finally we have this post from Feeling Good, Feeling Great, who's Kent, who I had on Launchpad recently. One of the things that Kent talked about on Launchpad was the university program that he's setting up. So here he had an update to that where he was kind of changing like some of the things and like getting ready to put a grant in with the GMC. He says, hi Rocket Pool community and GMC. He's an updated proposal with clear ask of RPL to fund Ethereum and Rocket Pool nodes to be run on site at universities around the world, starting with the University of Cincinnati in phase number 1 of 3 phases in this grant request. And this is Rocket Pool, blah, blah, blah. And there's a link to a Google Doc. He says, here's the summary. We're requesting funding for 5 new Rocket Pool nodes run locally at leading universities. Total funding request is for 700 RPL or 150 RPL per university. The RPL will be used to finance the ETH bond per university and to run the programs to onboard each university in running a node locally, as well as participating in Rocket Pool's governance. Rocket Pool node operator or governance internships will create new onboarding guides and research to support the most vibrant Rocket Pool ecosystem ahead. And then there's a quote from a couple of people like at the university. He says, we look forward to community feedback before submitting the next grants forum for funding of phase 1 in the next cycle if approved. Thank you for your time and input. So we've got some input here from Pateris, who says students can learn to set up Rocket Pool nodes on the testnet, which of course won't cost anything. There's a whole bunch of people in the Rocket Pool community who will happily give them ETH and RPL on the testnet for them to do that. And then Pateris says they can participate in governance by convincing node operators to delegate their vote to them. This would even be more impactful than buying voting power. And he says the University of Cincinnati's endowment is $1.775 billion. Yeah. Val says, I really like the governance idea floated by Pateris. I absolutely shill for getting delegation to a university club that wrote out their reasoning on votes. For example, I think this side is significantly more valuable experience than the mechanics of running Smartnode. So I think, I'm not speaking in the capacity of a GMC member who, might see this proposal come to them on the committee, but I'm just speaking as WAC, host of Rocket Fuel. I really like Pateris's and Val's comments here. I think it makes sense to run the validators on testnet. There's no difference between testnet validators and mainnet validators. And of course, if they make their case in trading to get the voting power, then I'm absolutely certain that a whole bunch of people will delegate their votes to these clubs, and they'd have a nice amount of voting power, maybe like 100 votes, maybe more, maybe less, that they could use to vote on governance and kind of talk about that and present that information to the community. I think that's where the real value lies, just like Pateris and Valdorf suggest here. So that's really interesting. Of course, as a GMC member, I can't really comment until I see the proposal when it's finally submitted, but I'll let you all know as and when that happens. Thank you all for watching, listening, and being part of the Rocket Fuel community. I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.